All right, today is February 11th, 2020. This is a meeting of the Kubernetes Storage SIG. Just as a reminder, this meeting is recorded and posted on YouTube. So first...
Michelle, it's the 13th.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's February 13th. First thing on the agenda is to go down our 118 planning spreadsheets and get status updates on all the 118 work that we are doing. So first up is CSI Online Offline resizing. Is
I
Hamad
don't have
online?
any. Yeah, I'm here. So the two PRs in flight, same thing. I need to open a PR for fixing the calling node expansion on all volume, that where the volume is attached as read write. That's the work that's left. But other two PRs are done. David has some comments. I need to update the PR.
Okay. Let me first insert a new... This is going to work. Cool. All right, so to summarize, no change from last time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Next up is CSI Windows.
So
We
this
have...
is KK.
Okay.
The updates are that so updates are that we have gotten the upstream changes merged for node driver registrar, as well as the kubelet changes which were required to make it working. The disk APIs PRs have been merged currently, and a few more PRs we are in the process of getting merged. That's the current status.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next up is Snapshots.
So the CSI Driver doc PR is merged, and also there are some PR on improving the tests. There's a list snapshot secret PR that is review in progress. The create snapshot timeout issue that appeared to have already been fixed in the beta version, and it's being validated right now.
Cool. Thank you for the update.
Thanks.
Next up is non-recursive volume ownership fixes.
I don't have update yet for this one.
All right.
But it should be.
And then next up is SE Linux.
No update. I have the design in my head. I need to write a tab. Okay.
Awesome. We're gonna skip over Windows permissions since I think that's... Is that committed? Do you know, KK, is this being looked at?
Not as far as I know. They're not
Okay.
looking at it.
Okay. CSI in-tree read-only handling. Is Chris on the line at all? All right, let's skip that. Next is CSI Driver GA. This is for the skip attach and pod info on mount features.
This is Christian. I circled back to that starting this week, and I was able to update the OpenPR with the API. I'm going through and updating all the references to it. There have been a couple of issues with dropping the volume lifecycle mode when I'm doing that, but I'm working through them. So effectively,
Okay.
It's still in progress.
Awesome. Thank you for the update. Improve CSI metrics. I think we're done with this. Next up is issues related to assuming volumes are mount points. I'm not sure anyone's
This
actually.
sounds new.
It's been around for a while. We identified this as potentially problematic many releases ago, but we've been sort of kicking the tires on this. But I think, especially with ephemeral CSI volumes, people have been seeing more and more issues around this.
Well,
so
with block volumes, you're going to have problems because
I
sometimes
think
they're just not.
yeah. So I think block volumes is taken care of. This is
Okay.
For the file system mode. Even with file system mode, not all plugins actually do mounts.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think there's some.
But is this a CSI problem or a kubelet problem or something
It's
down inside the CSI kubelet or the kubelet CSI code?
It's not really specific to CSI. I think it's issues in kubelet assuming that things are mount points and potentially like skipping cleanup and things like that. The problem is just showing up more frequently now that we have more CSI drivers.
Okay, news to me.
Yeah. So I think Jing has been trying to fix some bugs around this, but then I know there's other bugs also. Like I think either maybe Hamad or Fabio, you were looking at some node publish issue potentially related to this.
Node staging, yeah. The node stage is skipped if the volume is mounted. So how are we planning to fix this? We did not discuss this finally. We are going to skip the check that mount point. Maybe we can talk that off.
Yeah. We should figure out if that's safe to do. I hope it's safe to do. Anyway, okay, but we'll follow up on offline on what kind of fixes we can do. All right. Next up is volume snapshot namespace transfer.
Hi, yeah, I can give an update on this. Last week, I started looking into it. I talked to John Griffith to get a bit of the history. Basically, it started out as, PVC and snapshot transfer, then turned into a generic object transfer, but then we decided that it's probably best to focus back on PVC and snapshot. So I started a KEP and I started doing some prototyping. I was going to submit the KEP, but I just had one, just in my research thus far, it seems like this may be something that we can implement with just a controller, external controller and some CRDs. So I was wondering if it really is a KEP or should we maybe, maybe just have this discussion in the KEP, but it just seemed like it may be, I may be missing some, edge case or something, but it seems like something that we may be able to do externally.
Yeah, I think even if the work is done externally, if we intend for this to be some sort of common controller that we want to run in all Kubernetes clusters, it might still be worth making a KEP for it.
Okay, I will. I'll post a PR for that.
Awesome. All right. Next up is CSI Volume Health.
So we had a CSI review meeting on Tuesday. So submitted a PR in the CSI spec repo, got review comments, addressed them. Ben had reviewed it and he said he's happy with it now. So I added the experimental tag. So just hope to get this merged soon.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much.
I need to. I think I need to send an email to SIG Storage because we need to open a repo for this for the controller and the agent.
Okay. Sounds good. Next up is storage pool, storage capacity tracking. Is Patrick on the line? All right, skipping. Next, we have volume group APIs to handle snapshots, consistency groups, and spreading.
So I submitted a cap for that.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now it only covers use cases and the Kubernetes API side. I didn't add anything for CSI yet. I think we need to discuss first.
Yeah.
And decide, because right now it covers too many things.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
What is being spreaded in this proposal?
Spreading basically just it's basically the volume placement. Basically, just say all those volume should be placed together or not together, things like that. This just added some topology related things there.
With some notion of storage topology, because I was going to say,
yeah,
we already have spreading for the pods and the nodes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, I'm not sure if this one is needed because because Patrick has a cap to use the storage pool. So that's the thing that we need to decide whether we should remove that part out of this.
Okay, that sounds good. We can follow that in the cap, and if you have the cap number, go ahead and drop it into the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I will.
Awesome, thank you. Next up, we have generic populator data source.
Yeah, I don't have a PR for this yet. I'm expecting that next week.
All right, sounds good.
So.
Thank you. Next up, we have the CSI generic NFS and Iscuzzy drivers. I had sent an email out to the list asking for help on this. Otherwise, we would go ahead and deprecate the repos. I've been able to find a couple of volunteers to help work on both the NFS and Iscuzzy drivers. So I think in terms of deprecation, we can hold off on those two drivers for now and still continue to work on them. So, and there's been PRs out. There's been PRs out to help update the repos and get the CI infrastructure and stuff set up. So that's making progress. As for fiber channel and flex adapter drivers, I did not get many responses there. I got one person for fiber channel, but I would really like to have at least two to continue maintaining the repo, and then no responses for flex adapters. So I think those two are still currently going to be deprecated. Next up is the deprecation of the Kubernetes Incubator external storage repo. This is where a lot of the external provisioners have been living for a while. I think I haven't had a chance to sync up with Matt on this, but so far I have not heard anything otherwise in terms of not deprecating the repo. So as far as I know, we're still on track to archive this soon. All right, next up is Roblox GA.
I am testing Roblox with CSI and without CSI. I found a couple of issues and fixed them, waiting for review. And Dimitro has submitted a pull request for CSI Sanity for block volumes. So it is on a good track for
Awesome.
GA in 18.
Cool. Thank you very much. Next up, we have CSI Migration. Is Deep or David around? I think at this point, David was working on fixing a bug in deletion with migration. I think, Jan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of the PRs have merged to fix this issue.
Yes, they have been merged. I'm not sure that they were released.
Oh, okay. So we need new CSI provisioner release. Okay. And the other thing is that we are continuing to, each of the cloud entry cloud providers are working on improving their CSI migration implementations. So last quarter, GCE and AWS went beta, and I believe this, I'm not sure if this release any of the other cloud providers are going to target beta. I have seen some activity from OpenStack in terms of enabling the testing, and also I think some activity around Azure for at least working towards the Windows implementation so that they can support both Windows and Linux migration. Does anyone have any other updates from the other clouds, Azure, OpenStack, or VMware?
So we are not planning to do beta this round. We will take it up in the upcoming cycle.
All right.
Azure. This is
Azure. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think I'm not sure. Does anyone know on OpenStack if they plan to go beta in this release or stay alpha?
I saw something in the release notes for Alpha 5 that just came out today, but I don't remember if that's what it was.
Okay. I'll just say no update for now. All right. Moving on is the object storage API.
Hey, Michelle, we are still working on that. We've started collaborating with Saad, Andrew, and Joe Chen to implement a more CSI-like design. And as such, the KEP is now kind of stale. We're working on an offline draft of it with them. And once we've got the entire thing rewritten, we're going to push it up as one large PR rather than piecemealing a bunch of small iterative changes.
Okay, sounds good.
And we've also got, sorry, let me add too that Jeff and I have prototyped our own version. I know Saad, Andrew, and Joe have prototyped theirs as well. So there is code being written in the background.
All right, awesome. Thank you for the update. Next up, we have various issues that are owned by SIG apps, but we are very much interested in them too. First is volume expansion for stateful sets. My name is on this for some reason.
So I don't think there is action happening on it, Michelle. Somebody needs to take it up. and restart the KEP.
I see. I forgot. Did you attend a SIG apps meeting?
Yes, if
I
you
see.
scroll back then the previous week's status, so I attended SIG apps meeting. Folks are interested in reviewing it, but like Ken was interested in reviewing it from SIG apps, but there is no action at all on the KEP, so probably needs to be
I
taken
see.
up and
Okay.
refreshed.
So basically needs a new owner from SIG apps.
So I'm not really sure whether it's a SIG apps thing or like somebody needs to own it. It's not specifically SIG apps per se. There is
Okay.
interest in SIG apps that they would come and review it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Next up is fixing an issue where PVCs created by stateful sets will not be automatically removed when the stateful set is deleted.
I don't know if Dave's online. So he said he's looking at this and he will submit a CAP. I
Okay.
haven't seen it yet, but I think he's still interested.
All right. Sounds good. I will say CAP in progress. Awesome. And next up is the execution hook.
Yeah, so we started discussion about this in the data protection work group yesterday, but didn't get time to finish. So if we are adding a hook inside container, as suggested by the API reviewer in that PR, I think probably we would still need an external controller like the application snapshot controller to trigger the execution, because otherwise we'll have to have kubelet trigger it, but then kubelet doesn't really know when. So in order for kubelet to do it, then we will need to have kubelet watch an entry API object. So that can be a PVC, but that's kind of odd because we are taking an application snapshot, which means we may need to introduce a new API object for kubelet to watch it. So we do need to have follow-up discussions on this.
Okay. Cool. And this will be discussed in the data protection work group?
Yeah.
Shing, do we have a comprehensive prototype of at least like one application and an example of the execution hooks that it would need and an implementation of those? So like someone who's experimenting with this stuff could test all the steps?
Yeah, so I do have a prototype like a year ago. If you're interested, I can show you what that is. It's based on an older version of that CAP, but I can show you how that's just for, you can run that hook manually. You create a hook to freeze, and then you take snapshots. And then you create another hook to unfreeze, basically.
When you say
tested
freeze,
that.
Are you referring to the application quiescing code that runs, or
It
the
doesn't
actual
matter.
FS?
You could since you define your own hook, so it can be other things too. If you want to do a file system freeze, you could use that as well. It's just different commands. So the test I did is with a MySQL.
Okay, what this is after being in a lot of these meetings around execution hooks, I'm beginning to wonder if like the FS freeze, FS unfreeze stuff is generic enough that it could be done as a separate thing, and we of course we still need execution hooks. But
no, so actually, yesterday I didn't get time to finish. Actually, in those slides at the end, I actually have one slide for FS freeze in CSI. I was thinking maybe good to have a combination of those, but we should probably talk about this offline.
Okay, yeah, we just need to have like a whole meeting on execution hooks where we get down into those weeds. Okay.
Yes. Hey, Xiangqian.
Yeah, it might not be enough just to FS freeze, but we can discuss.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think it's enough. I was actually thinking, if I was trying to finish the slide yesterday, basically at the end I was thinking like my alternative option 2B and option 3, so something like that.
The reason I bring it up, the reason I bring it up is because I've been thinking about this for a while, and like a lot of the things you want to do can be done outside of Kubernetes, you know, in controllers and sidecars and stuff. But the FS freeze is the one that I get stuck on, and I feel like it would be nice if like Kubelet just had a facility for doing this for us. And I wonder if anyone's thought about taking that piece and shoving that into Kubelet and keeping the rest of it out in a sidecar, and if that could be made to work.
So I do have that in the, if you look at the slide that I showed yesterday. Well, I didn't get to show that at the end. One page has that. I kind of talked about how Kubelet can trigger this. So maybe
in terms of work streams, these things could be pursued in parallel. Like someone could be doing FS freeze, FS unfreeze in Kubelet, and someone else could be doing all the other execution hooks, and it could all come together into a working solution.
Right, but if both are triggered by Kubelet, then it's kind of redundant. So that's the piece.
Okay, well, I don't understand that piece yet. So
yeah, we need to have another meeting just to focus on that and talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So that's all the things on our Planning 118 timeline. Is Sod back?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. I think we can move on to the next agenda items.
Yeah, it looks like the next one is KK and giving an update on CSI for Windows. KK?
Yes, let me share the screen. I have a few set of slides. Are you guys able to see it?
Yep.
Okay. So welcome to SIG Storage demo session. So I am Krishna Kumar. You guys can call me KK. Today we'll go through CSI Proxy project, a brief intro into it, the current status, the future plans, and a demo of Azure Disk Driver working along with CSI Proxy. So the whole idea is that CSI drivers in general are containerized, and they need to perform privileged operations from within the containers. But Windows world still doesn't support privileged containers yet. So because of that, we need some other way in which we can solve this issue, wherein CSI drivers can still perform the privileged containers, but they will be inside the container. That is where CSI project comes into picture, wherein there will be this proxy process sitting outside on the node, and they would be the drivers would be able to contact this proxy process, run the elevated commands via the proxy process, and perform the regular CSI operations. So some of the examples are like partitioning the disk, formatting, etc. Those are like privileged operations which will happen in this model. So the work started with a KEP. I put a link to the KEP here in the presentation. We have a GitHub repo where most of the activities are happening, and there's a good talk in KubeCon for which I put the link here as well from Gene and Deep, going into a lot of details and context of how this came about. Let's move to a general architecture figure. So here, as you can see, CSI proxy is going to be a process just like Kubelet, and it would get commands over a Unix socket in Windows from the storage vendor related, like plugins. There are storage vendor plugins would get contacted from Kubelet as well as CSI node driver registers like normal, as in Linux, the same things would happen. But when the node plugin is about to do these privileged operations, it would proxy it off to the CSI proxy process, perform these operations there and get back the result and do the regular CSI activities. These APIs which we have in the CSI proxy are versioned and they are predefined. So the node plugins have to be modified to make this work on Windows. So that is how the overall architecture works. The following are the API groups that we implement in the CSI proxy. There are 4 main groups as of now. The disk, volume, SMB, and file system. Like operations like partitioning the disk, rescanning the host storage, formatting, creating a link between 2 paths, etc., are done from the plugin. It would ship these calls to the CSI proxy, and proxy would perform it on behalf of the plugin. There are operations for SMB as well. This is in cases where we have file-based storage drivers, which needs to mount SMB storage from a remote service. In that case, these SMB calls would be made available too. So let's move on to a sample flow. These are 2 phases. Here we are just taking example for 2 phases, but pretty much all the phases which requires node related operations would involve CSI proxy. But for example, in node stage volume, typically these operations like updating the host storage cache, listing the disks, partitioning them, taking up the volumes, formatting them, all of these operations happen as normal, like by the node driver plugin. But these operations get shipped to CSI proxy, and they would perform. The proxy would perform it on behalf of that. Similarly, in node publish volume, we have the way in which global mount would be, connected to a specific local directory, which will be used for the port to access the contents. So that would also be shipped to the CSI proxy and we perform this by creating a soft link in Windows side of things. Now we have the demo, but before that, if anyone has questions for what we went through just now.
I have a question. This is Ben.
Yep.
So this is a short-term plan, and the plan is eventually there will be privileged containers and this will go away, or is this actually something that we like and would want to preserve even if Windows eventually has privileged containers someday?
So it is definitely the case, Ben, that if Windows comes up with privileged containers, we would definitely have, easily switch to privileged container form. But as of now, the plans are not very clear. It's not presented yet out on when the timelines are. So for the foreseen time, I think we'll have to run CSI proxy approach to get what we want.
I mean, the reason I'm asking is because this design could be applied in reverse back to Linux, and it would solve a number of problems. So like, if we like this model, I wonder if we should investigate like a Linux storage proxy of some form that would do the same facilities on behalf of drivers. I don't know. It's just
in mind, Ben, in terms of operations that it would be useful for on the Linux side.
Oh, all the Iscuzzy madness, module loading, a lot of file system type stuff. I mean, file systems require modules to be loaded. There's just a lot of things that the node plugins need superpower for, and if you could take the superpower out of the node plugin and put it into a centralized, community reviewed, community owned thing, so that the node plugins themselves didn't need to be privileged, like that would be a step forward security wise. Probably reduce some bugs, maybe improve compatibility across distributions. I don't know, like there's just, I'm just looking at this and translating it backwards into Linux because I don't personally care about Windows, and trying to imagine if that would be better or worse. So I don't know.
So one thought about that is the distribution of the process itself, right? Right now, when we have it in container form, it's a much straightforward thing. but when you have this additional process, the corresponding distros or the providers need to really do the deployment in a different form. So that was one thing which comes to my mind quickly when you mention it, Ben, but I think it needs a wider discussion.
Sure. I mean, and I'd be thinking about a distant future. Like if this got deployed and was working on Windows and we had CSI drivers that were using it and they were like, yes, this is a good model, then it would be a good idea to say, okay, could we do the same thing on Linux? That seems several releases away.
Cool. So I think maybe we should have an offline discussion about it and see how things evolve on that, Ben.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Cool. Are there more folks with questions? Okay. Let me switch to a separate player just to make sure that it's of a good font size. So basically, this is a demo in which Azure disk driver is operating with a deployment, and we have a PVC and a PV, which has been previously created. We have a deployment where we have specifically made sure that it goes to the Windows nodes only, as in like node selectors have been set to run on only Windows. Then we have the PVC being mounted in a location called which we have named MNT Azure Disk. So we will just run the deployment, wait for it to come to created state, basically running state, sorry. So some of the actions, like for example, from the container creating state to running state, in this video, it goes very quickly, but that's not the case. It does take some time. So this is to ensure that we can finish the demo quickly. I have edited some of the waiting time here, but effectively what happened is we deployed like a deployment, and we went from container creating to running state. We are now about to exec into the container, create some files, and so MNT Azure Disk is where we have mounted it. So we're going to create some files there. So the idea is that we store these files, we delete off the deployment, recreate it, and ensure that they are indeed really persisted on the PC. So and then basically deleting the deployment and then recreating it again, just to ensure that we have persistence. Let me forward it up. Okay. So now we exec into the pod again. At this point, yeah, now we exec into the pod again. At this point, we should be able to see the files here. And to show the magic worked, we just print the date, and there's a difference in the time. So that's how we prove that things worked. So that was the demo. Let me go back to the slide set. Yep. So a little bit of current status and future plan. So we have end-to-end Azure, like Azure disk working right now with work in progress PRs. There were changes required in the kubelet CSI, utilities portions of it. There were changes required for node driver registrar. Those things are currently merged. The PRs on CSI proxy are in the process of, some of them are merged, some of them are under process. We have a few discussions still going on the file system API. Effectively around this is likely not mount path negative API, and a little bit of discussions around pod plugin context in the in terms of when the directories and files are created, we wanted to restrict what the path where these creations can happen. There's some discussions around that which we are having. But the whole idea is currently we have Azure Disk Work in Progress PR, which will, once the CSI proxy PRs all get merged, it's a straightforward thing to have this merged because it's already working, and like there's some more testing around it which we are doing. GCPD has we have also started working on it. The idea is that we will have an alpha release of CSI proxy as well as Azure Disk, at least working fine in the 1.18 timeframe. And where to go from here? Basically, we have the GitHub project, and we have the Slack channel, which people can come and interact more. We have weekly meetings every Friday at 3 p.m. And also meeting notes can be found here. We are always looking for contributors, so everybody is welcome to come and join. So, and then thank you. That's about it.
All right, thank you so much.
I had one other question.
Yep.
I didn't see Iscuzzy mentioned anywhere in there. I thought that at one point Iscuzzy was going to be covered by this thing.
Yes, so we do have plans, Ben, but we haven't been able to get to it.
Okay, so it's like a 2.0 kind of a thing for you.
Yes,
Sure.
as of now, yeah.
One more question.
Yep.
The two CSI drivers you listed are both disk-based.
Yes.
There's no Samba-based one, but we are putting in Samba APIs.
Yep. So the way in which we are going to work, Michelle, is that we are going to start working on Azure file as soon as the SMB thing gets merged, APIs gets merged, and work it out to see if we can do it in 1.18. But it's not very clear that everything will work end to end because currently we are just focusing on the disk, but we do have an intent to try and finish it up by 1.18 timeframe as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Cool. So if there are no more questions, we could move on to the next item.
All right, any other questions? Going once, twice, and sold. All right, thank you so much, KK. I think this is a extremely valuable project for the large portion of the world that still uses Windows. And so I'm looking forward to this landing in alpha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is an update on SIG governance. As many of you know, my co-lead Brad Childs passed away late last year. And so since then, it's kind of been me running the group. That is not sustainable for obvious reasons. So a few weeks ago, I had put out a call to ask for volunteers for SIG leadership. And so today I wanted to make some announcements. Specifically, one is around how we're going to, instead of having two chairs running the group, we're going to follow the model of other groups, other SIGs, where they've broken the role into kind of two separate roles. There's a chair that manages kind of the administrivia and meetings and things like that. And then there are tech leads who manage kind of the technical aspect of things. And so we'll have two chairs and we'll have two tech leads. And so for tech leads, we have two volunteers, Jan and Michelle, who pretty much have been acting in this role. So I'm very happy to announce that they're going to be our tech leads for SIG Storage. And then the chair for SIG Storage, Xing volunteered, and I think she would be an excellent person to help run this group and keep us all on task. So please join me in thanking them and congratulating them for their new roles. Next steps, I am going to put together PRs in the community repos to update the SIG leadership officially. I'm going to send out messages to SIG architecture to let them know as a heads up that this is happening and the steering committee. And then I will be working with Jan, Michelle, and Xing to kind of onboard them. If you have any questions, concerns, objections, feel free to voice them now, or if you're not comfortable, always feel free to email me or any of the new leadership members, and we'd be happy to talk through it. Any questions, concerns, comments about that? All right, so moving right along, next item on the agenda is from, is it Jerry Seidman?
Jerry.
Jerry. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jerry. The company called Fedora Store, which is an AFS, Andrew file system-like file system. Later this month, on the 24th and 25th, is the Usenix conference vault on Linux storage and file systems. There's a track on Kubernetes, or not a track, a block on Kubernetes. There's 3 talks, one that I'm giving on Kubernetes storage, one on object storage, and one on Lustre. So there's also David Howells from Red Hat, who is a Linux kernel and storage and security guy who's done a lot of very important and interesting Linux kernel work on file systems, like FS Cache. If you're familiar with FS Cache, it's his work. My company is sponsoring a hackathon, totally, sponsored an open source hackathon on that work that he did. It also includes a kernel AFS driver, but David Howells will be there if anybody needs or would want to talk to him and learn what he's doing on with respect to containers and the Linux kernel for storage. That's not part of the conference, so that you can go to for free. It's all in Santa Clara. If anyone is planning on going, please reach out to me. It'd be great to meet up. And my email is on the list, jerry@orastor.com.
Cool, thank you, Jerry. Any other questions for him before we let him go? All right, moving along. Next item is CSI Sanity block support. I think Jan added this.
Yes, as I have said during the feature for 118, we have a pull request to add block test to CSI Sanity, and actually I find out that I don't have a driver to test it with. So if you happen to have a driver that supports Roblox and you use CSI Sanity, then please check the pull request, compile it by yourself. And
didn't we add raw block support to host path driver?
Yeah, it is, but it is like kind of fake Roblox,
Okay, so you did test that, and you just don't think it's a good test.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roblox passed just fine, and I tried Azure, Amazon, but they use CSI Sanity just with fake cloud provider, so it doesn't really test anything. So if you have a driver, please check the pull request, compile it. Please let me know if it works. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Jan. And last item is KubeCon EU is coming up at the end of March, beginning of April. There will be a SIG storage intro, a number of talks, and a data protection work group session. If you are aware of anything else that's going to be happening or you want to organize something, feel free to add it to this agenda and we can talk about it. That is all I had for the meeting today. Anything else anybody wants to talk about today? All right, thank you very much, and we'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Take care.